So building a 2-week emergency supply sounds easy enough to do. Local emergency services, governments, preppers all tell us that having at least 2 weeks of food and essentials on hand is super important. However, it's estimated that over 80% of North Americans do not have enough food and supplies in their home to last that 14 days. So today, I'd like to show you all what is in my large family's 2-week stockpile. Everything I need is in these totes right here, and I'm hoping I can also give you all some practical tips on how you can do this yourselves at home in a really simple and easy way. Let's go. I'm Jen. I love to talk about living on less and being prepared for any eventuality. This year we've really discovered just how important that is, haven't we, everybody? So if you're new to this channel, you may not know that I live in rural Ontario, Canada with my husband, and we have 6 children. We grow and preserve a lot of our own food, which means we usually have between 6 and 12 months of food stocked in our freezer or on our shelves at any given time. But you certainly don't need to go as all in as we do in order to be prepared. Today I'm going to show you what's inside these babies behind me and hopefully just give you some practical tips for prepping. First of all, right off the bat, I do prep a lot. I do have a large amount here, but that is because my family is large. So we're obviously going to have a lot more than the average family that might only have 2 or 4 people in it. And even though I have a lot of food on shelves and in freezers, as you can see, I do think it is important to also have an amount set aside that you're not consuming on a daily basis. Just in case of an emergency, like what I'm thinking here is if you ever had to leave your home in a hurry, most of us in North America are within an hour or 2 of a nuclear reactor. So if there was ever some sort of fallout on the way and you just have to get out of there fast, it's really nice to have some bins or totes with 2 weeks worth of supply, just that you could actually lift up and sock in the back of your truck, your van, your car, whatever. I love my Rubbermaid Totes. These heavy duty ones have lasted me a good 15 years already, and I will link them below in case you're interested in them along with some of my other prepping supplies. I just find that it's much better than maybe a cardboard or wooden box because they are waterproof. If you're in a rural area, they will keep the mice out and any other critters that might want to get into your supply. And they're pretty lightweight for lugging around. So I have 2 different totes here. One is for food storage and the other one I have is for toiletries, medicines, and necessities. If you are just starting out on getting together a 2-week supply, the very first thing I want you to do is to get out a piece of paper and make a list. Lists are great, everyone. What you're gonna do is you're gonna document how much your household eats in a 2-week span. So, for breakfast, how many boxes of cereal do you go through? For lunches, how many boxes of crackers or meat or veggies or fruit do you go through? For dinner time, how much pasta, how much rice do you go through in a 2-week period? You need to write that down so that you can accurately build your supply. Once you have that list made, you're going to write down meal ideas for if you are in an emergency, what you could make from your emergency stock that only involves maybe water and heat in order to prepare. Or maybe neither water and heat. Maybe it can just be something that you can open and eat. So I'm going to show you what I have for 2 weeks worth for my family of 8, and it might give you some ideas of things you want to pack as well. We preserve a lot ourselves, so you are gonna see like mason jars full of produce in here. If you don't do that, no worries, just get canned and boxed goods from your store. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take everything out and I'm gonna separate it into breakfast, lunch, and supper so that you can see what our family would do in an emergency. Breakfast foods, I think the key here is variety. Sure, 14 days would be easy enough to just sock a bunch of cereal in there and that's what everybody eats for 14 days. But I know in our family, we do like to have different things. So I've got here not only cereal, but also oatmeal, as well as like Nutri-Grain bars, yogurt dipped granola, nut bars. And because bread obviously doesn't keep, so you can't necessarily have toast in this supply, I've just got some soda crackers that we can easily put peanut butter and jam on. And there's 4 big sleeves of crackers in there so that it would last us a couple breakfasts. And my kids really do like applesauce, so I did throw 5 huge jars of applesauce in there that we made ourselves just to add some sweetness to breakfast. Now, certain things aren't available in an emergency if you don't have electricity, like milk. So cereal you might have to have without milk, but I find dry cereal is just fine, and you can have water and you'll be good to go. You'll notice here that I'm not featuring food that I got off of like a prepper website or anything like that. Maybe someday I will go that far, but for us, I find if I don't normally eat dehydrated eggs where you just add water, I probably don't want to eat them in an emergency. I'm gonna want comfortable food that I eat normally, and that is going to make me less stressed, not more stressed. So I'm gonna pack familiar things. So for the lunch foods, I keep the same thing in mind. Yeah, you'll notice here that there's a few things that are probably space wasters, like these corn chips. But I feel like if we're in the middle of something where we need our food supply, having some chips and salsa for lunch might just be something that'll make us feel better. So I also have little treats packed in our emergency supply, like my favorite tea and some chocolates for the kids. I'd love to know from you guys, like in the middle of a crisis, what is something that you just could not live without eating? For me, it's definitely high carb things like pasta, chips, mac and cheese, just comfort foods. What about you? What can you not live without? Comment below. So my tactic for lunches here is that I have a whole bunch of like canned meats. So tuna, salmon, ham, chicken, things that we can simply mix with some mayo and pickles and serve with crackers. I also have different things like mac and cheese or ramen noodles. These are things you can make with just water. You don't have to make mac and cheese with butter and milk. You can do it with water in a pinch and it's still gonna taste pretty darn good. I've got some of our home canned pears as well as dill pickles, sweet pickles, and jalapeno peppers. So these are things that, well, my comfort food is carbs. I know my husband and a few of my children, they really do love a salty pickle or a hot pepper. So I definitely have some of those in our emergency pack. Some of my stuff is brand name, some of my stuff is store brand stuff. That is because I've bought a lot of this with coupons or on sale. So when you are building your own supply, it can be pretty expensive to buy 2 weeks of food all at once. So just do it gradually. Look for sales, use your coupons. I have videos all about that I will link for you so you can watch those after this if you want more advice on how to build that supply cheaply. But this is definitely a supply that has been bought gradually over time. Okay, let's talk about our supper foods. Do you guys call it supper or dinner? I know my grandma always calls it dinner, and supper is not the word you're supposed to use. So anyway, I don't know what you guys call it. I call it supper. And this is usually our bigger meal at our house. So I want to make sure I kind of have a lot of calories that pack a punch in here. So you'll notice I do have a lot of good multigrain pastas, a massive bag of rice. So the pastas and rice are going to last us, you know, the full 2 weeks likely. And then I have things I can put with it. So if I've got beans and bacon, I've got some canned corned beef and lots of canned vegetables. So we've got peas, beans, corn, mixed veggies, because we do want to make sure we're still getting our fruits and vegetables in an emergency. You're going to need vitamins in this crisis, so you definitely want to have that on hand. I have canned tomatoes so I can make up a soup or a stew in a pinch. I also have some canned pasta sauce for our spaghetti, and then also some chunky stew that includes meat, potatoes, really hearty stuff. Here you'll see some massive jars of our canned Ontario peaches. We can't forget about that because it adds just some sweetness to the end of the meal. One thing I did want to mention about our emergency supply is this is very similar food to what I pack when our family goes camping. If you haven't seen our camping videos, we love to go camping, tent camping specifically, where there's no electricity. And I think camping is probably a really good practice to, if you ever are in an emergency and you need to use a camp stove, you don't have potable water, what do? It's maybe like a fun way to practice for emergencies. And a lot of the recipes I'm doing here are very similar to what I would take camping. I'll link my playlist for camping as well in case you wanted to watch those. Water, even though it's not in my food supply storage tote, I do have several huge jugs of water that we keep in our fruit cellar for any sort of emergency. Usually where we live, it's never happened that we've gone without water, but it could. I have heard mentioned before on prepper sites that if something goes down and you know you're going to be without water, the very first thing you should do is fill all of the bathtubs in your house. So there's some advice for you, but you also want to have some water on hand just in case yours is tainted that you can use for drinking. I mean, you can live longer on no food than you can on no water. So water is really, really important for your emergency supply. Are you getting some good ideas here, guys? If so, don't forget to pop that like button down below. It really helps the video out and it helps it to trend a little better on YouTube so other people can see it. Okay, let's talk next about what is in this tote right here, and that is my kind of essential necessity medicine supply. After 2020, kind of the obvious thing that is in there is toilet paper. Definitely have a pack of toilet paper in your emergency supply if you don't already. And the next three things I've had in my emergency supply for years, and I couldn't believe actually how very important they did become in the middle of a pandemic. And that was a big, huge jug of hand sanitizer, surgical masks, and some vinyl gloves. Were you guys as surprised as I was how quickly we had a shortage of those items when kind of things hit the fan? I couldn't believe that within like a week there was no hand sanitizer to be found. Thankfully, that has been kind of corrected in our supply chain, but I still think it's a really good thing to have on hand. When it comes to medicinal things, I think everyone should have a first aid kit in their emergency supply. Mine just has like antiseptic wipes, band-aids, gauze, things that I might need in an emergency. Especially here in Canada, there are times when the roads are closed. Maybe somebody in your home needs stitches, but you can't exactly get to the hospital. It's really good to have things on hand that are antiseptic, antibacterial, that will staunch bleeding, and just for general emergencies. I also have the following medications that are kind of just basic medications that are in that stock. So Tylenol or acetaminophen, I have a big huge jug. Extra strength ibuprofen, or otherwise known as Advil. Gravol. And then if you have kids in your home, the same sort of things that are for their dosage. So I've got like children's ibuprofen and Pepto-Bismol here. I also think it's a good idea to have a supply of Gatorade. I have 6 bottles in our essentials pack. The reason I have them is not so, in case you're out for a run and you need a Gatorade during an emergency. It's for if somebody is sick and they need to replenish their fluids, their salts, their sugars, and you're nowhere close to a hospital with an IV. Gatorade is certainly something you should have on hand, and the shelf life for this stuff is pretty long. If you've got gals in your home, you definitely want some feminine products thrown in there. In our house, we have 5 females. So you can imagine how important it is to me that we always have a big stock of these on hand. I've got a really good flashlight that also doubles as a lantern. In rural Ontario where we live, we are without power frequently, especially during winter storms. So it's really good to have one of these. Along with that, some sort of candle and a lighter so you can keep warm if you have no heat. At least one room of your house, you can have some candles lit and you can have light and warmth. Now, where my preppers at? Are there things that I missed in my 2-week supply that you have in yours? Please share it with us below and let's help each other out. There's probably people watching this video who don't even know where to start, who've never done a 2-week emergency supply, that would love to have your input below too. This video topic was actually based on a suggestion from a viewer. So please never hesitate to let me know in the comments below a video or send me a message on any of my socials. They're all below. If you have a video idea and something that you'd really like me to cover, I welcome your input and I'm making these videos for you. So please let me know what you want to see. Next up is my prepping playlist, where I go into a lot more detail on kind of how to be a regular, everyday, practical prepper. I talk about prepping your home for an emergency, outdoor considerations, how to do things cheaply, so definitely check those videos out, and I can't wait to see you there. For the least, this is Jen.